it basically changed the entire trajectory of my life. It changed everything. So it's 7 years ago now that I discovered the Nofap community on Reddit. I started reading stories. I started thinking about my own relationship, my own, like, I don't know if you call it sexuality. Started pondering, starting testing, going on Nofap streets, struggling a lot. I remember back, like those 7 years ago, my first ever streak was 8 days, and it was just like, I was having like cold sweats and just, it was a insane physical battle. And I transmuted the energy every day, and then I relapsed after 8 days. And the following streak was 156 days. And like, it just changed everything. It just like set up my understanding about sex and relationships and women and myself, which has like led me through these 7 years where I've been falling hundreds of times and getting back up, learning from my mistakes, learning from the traps that my ego set up for me. But I think the more you go through this, if you're committed, it's basically just realizing that we as individuals can be slaves quite easily to anything, being a slave through addiction to something. And since pornography is tied to something deeply rooted in our biology, which is reproduction, love, sex, pleasure, then it's something that's very hard to like get rid of or like purify, because deep down, I think we all want connections. We want a partner that loves us and takes, someone we respect, someone we can be close to, right? But that gets confused with just the pure pleasure of it. It's easy to become a hedonist in this age. It's actually being celebrated that we are in this life to seek pleasure, and only seek pleasure, and then avoid pain. And the more like that you yell loudly about ways of pleasuring yourself with sweets and pornography and all this alcohol, nicotine, caffeine, different kind of drugs, it's kind of being celebrated online that you're just enjoying life to the fullest. And I think I've been pulled into this narrative many times because it is a perfect narrative, right? We live just to enjoy life and just to feel pleasure because we're going to die anyways, right? But every time I get pulled into that vortex, one of you guys commented saying vortex, I like that, or bubble, or whatever you want to call it. There is just, once you've tasted not being addicted, that is the sweetest fruit of them all, and no amount of pleasure will ever beat that kind of pleasure of not being a slave to these super stimuli. So every time I get pulled into that mode, that way of living, because everyone I know does it. Almost everyone. Like in the beginning, it feels nice because that's what it does. It feels nice. But when you live such a life, you have to keep getting your drug of choice in order to feel normal, in order to feel good. Because if you seek pleasure all the time, then you need to feel that pleasure in order to feel normal, right? But that's where I feel disconnected. I just feel like a robot, waiting for my next fix. Even though it can be very subtle, it's just, it happens every time. And something in my conscious and subconscious intuitively knows this isn't right. This is only going to end up bad, or like worse and worse and worse, because that's how drug addiction works. For any kind of drugs, where you just take the drug, whether through liquid, caffeine or alcohol, or crystallized sugar, or watching and leisuring yourself with porn and masturbation, or just having sex just to have sex, just to feel pleasure, not to try and connect to another person. Yeah, then you're just like then just disconnected, because it's just about attaining that sensation, that feeling. So it's just like a script, right? So when you're playing this script over and over again, seeking pleasure, avoiding pain, then I just don't feel like I have freedom. I don't have a sense of purpose. My purpose is simply to get the next fix. And that's where the disconnect is. That's where the bad feeling is. And this is what, like, when I started the Nofap journey, which later became semen retention, which just became living a life without addictions and creating my own purpose. That's where it happened. Like, I gained a new consciousness because I went through all of that. I actively went against just seeking pleasure. I tried to withstand or not do it. And when you try to do that, you get to experience firsthand the pull the addiction has. And then I realized throughout the months or years, like, it takes a few years, I think, to admit that you are addicted. I just thought of it as, I get all these benefits. Oh, it's so nice. I'm doing something that is not normal, I thought in the beginning. This is not normal to try to retain semen or try to not watch porn. I genuinely thought it was something that was not normal because, it kind of isn't. It's very normal to watch porn. It's very normal to be just living this hedonistic lifestyle. But then I realized throughout the months, throughout the years, that it was simply addiction keeping me down. And I needed my fix to feel normal. So every time I went out of that, my consciousness grew. My understanding of the world we live in grew through experience. So it can be very hard to navigate where, like, I've had so many revelations in regards to what kind of life I want to live. But at the same time, I have to play by the rules of my society and by the narrative of this country, of this world, the narrative of the internet. Because the internet has many tools, so much wisdom, but it also has all these subtle traps which pulls you back in and makes it seem normal. But somehow, and I don't know exactly how, something has been evolving. Like I've been learning to use my discernment from what will eventually kill me and what is very good for me and will keep me on the right path that I want to stay on. And if you take any addictions, eventually they will kill you. It may be many years down the road, but those years will just be in a robotic state, just seeking the pleasure, and you will need more and more of that drug. And in the end, your body or mind can't take it anymore and you will break. And I'm sorry to say that's just the truth. It will kill you somehow. Some organs failing, your mind failing mentally can destroy it. But then there are other things that will just keep building. So like sports and hobbies, certain types of food, at least in my case. Reading, even though I've read many books that led me into the subtle trap of like being pulled back into addictions, which is also quite crazy to realize. Certain people will uplift you, and others who make it seem they want to uplift you actually bring you down. That's also something I think you just have to learn as you mature. Always taking a hard look at your life. But I think me taking back my life, I know actually, me taking back my life started the day I discovered the Nofap community. And I know the Nofap community is not what it used to be. 7 years ago, it was a very beautiful place. There were so many, they call it Fabstronauts, because we were like pioneers trying to rediscover an ancient secret. Because it used to be a natural state. It used to be very normal back in the very old days, ancient times also. People knew intuitively and instinctively not to masturbate and not to have unnecessary sex in order to retain your life energy, your life force. And every time I've been pulled back into addiction and then got myself out of it, got myself out of the brainwashing, it's just a simple truth. But the mind is advanced. So it's easy to forget and get pulled into another direction. But yeah, like my life truly started 7 years ago when I discovered that. And I'm eternally grateful that I discovered it. But these days, it can be very dangerous to go into the semen retention, pure retention, Nofap community on Reddit. It can be dangerous to watch videos on YouTube about it. Because people just say what they want. I also say what I want. So just take everything I say with a grain of salt. But that's ultimately the journey, right? Learning to discern what is good for you, what is bad for you. And sometimes You just have to try it out. Try out the things you think you want to try. There's a guy on YouTube who calls it burning through your karma. You may have this ideology of what life you want to, like this idea of how you want to be, how you want to live, and all this. But it's just thoughts, right? I think you should try to just do the things you want to do and learn from them. And then you will learn, was this bad for me or was it good? If there's something you truly want, you should do it. And maybe you'll learn that the thing you thought you wanted, you didn't really want at all. It was just another dopamine trap. But if you just, at the moment, just need to feel pleasure, I think, yeah, maybe just do that. But just make sure you learn and you stay observant. But right now, I am on the good side of not being addicted. And it feels amazing. It feels amazing to be free. It's a calm state. So I'm gonna enjoy it as long as it lasts. And I will keep attaining as much as I can throughout my entire life. I know that for a fact, because the evidence has been put in front of me time and time and time again throughout these 7 years. Time and time again. It's never failed. Even though I really wanted it to fail. While I was in the addiction. Because who doesn't want to feel pleasure all the time, their entire lives? If you really think about it. We are all addicts who wants pleasure. But it will ultimately destroy us. Like sooner, very much sooner than if we just sought something different than our own wants or needs. But that's another topic. Yeah. Well, that's that. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye.